you can actually take a lot of novels, take a lot of poems, take religious books, and you can study how old age is depicted and what are um, the the needs of old people, because we all have old people at our places, but we sometimes forget to identify their needs. And we as literature people, we are more connected to fiction poems, so I think we should be more able to understand in this scenario where children are leaving their parents in old age homes, when people are actually, when children are going abroad to work, the old age people are left behind. So, what are their needs? What are their, I mean, expectations from us? So, all this we are going to explore through the select fiction when we read about gerontology. I hope everybody is going to enjoy this session. So, a brief introduction to literary gerontology. When you see me sitting quietly, like a sack left on the shelf, don't think I need your chattering. I'm listening to myself on Aging by Maya Angelou. And I couldn't find any suitable quote than this, which is written by Maya Angelou. See, they are always sitting quietly. They are left on a shelf. They don't need your chattering. They are listening to themselves, but at times they need people around them so that they can be understood. They can be understood in a better manner. The moment people begin talking about old age, they are immediately enlightened by certain individual and collective narratives. Now, old age, when this word comes into our mind, we always figure out something like we have to have a stick, we have to have limited eating, restrictions. We are not able to do certain things, but there can be varied perspectives on a single narrative of old age. Now, the perspective of an older person, suppose you have older people, their perspective, then the perspective of the caregivers, the family members who are taking their care, the servants, the caregivers. Then you have children. Children might have a very different perspective towards these old people. Their friends. Friends might say that, okay, because they are of the same age group, so they will understand the problems more emphatically as compared to other people. Then you have doctor treating the older person. How much motivation the doctor needs to give? How much of care the doctor needs to give? Literary perspectives, religious perspectives, economic and historical perspectives. Yes, economically, it is very important to be sound economically. Demographic perspectives, the older people living in plains as compared to the older people living in mountains. They are more sturdy because all through their life they have worked hard. They have moved into the terrain, into the difficult terrains of mountains. Philosophical perspectives, perspectives based on local traditions. Yes, sometimes it is the traditions of the family, traditions of the society, that actually, if a old person is trying to do something, they will actually pull that person back. See, you are now 75, you are now 80, you're not supposed to do this, you're not supposed to do that. Then perspectives of researchers belonging to various disciplines. So a lot of research can be conducted when it comes to this field, that is gerontology. You can compare, you can take interdisciplinary research in home science, with psychology. You can have cultural studies, you can have crisis study. All these things can be combined. It can be a very good topic for interdisciplinary research. And we as people of humanities, we are supposed to be more humanitarian in our aspects, in our thinking. That is why I have highlighted varied perspectives on a single narrative. Now, if you want to do PhD, you can actually talk about the older people, or you can compare and contrast the thought process of older people to the caregivers, to the children, to the doctor, then literary perspective. So you can have a plethora of perspectives when you talk about this concept of gerontology, how you can compare, how you can link it to sociology, to home science, to psychology. All these perspectives, both qualitative and quantitative, they constitute all these perspectives, like the perspective of a child, perspective of any other person, they actually constitute gerontology, the study of old age and aging. And please remember, we all will have to face this old age. Nobody is going to be, nobody will be so favorable to skip this old age. Now, where did this first come? It was at a conference on human values and aging, which was organized in 1975 under the leadership of David Van Tassel of Case Western Reserve University. That literary scholars, see, I'm again telling you, we are English literature people, we are literary scholars, we are prone to be more humanitarian. We are prone to understand things in a better manner. For the first time, and it systematically contemplated the theme of aging. And this is something which has been overlooked by the scholars, by the academicians, that why not talk about old age? How many, there are many novels being written on old age. Among the papers presented in this conference, two important ones were Psychoanalysis-Based Literary Analysis by Leon Edel and Leslie Flidder. So there are two papers. In his paper entitled Portrait of the Artist as an Old Man, Edel analyzed the works of John Wolfgang von Goethe, Leo Tolstoy, and Henry James to interrogate the theme of creativity and old age. See, this is again an interdisciplinary topic. How old people can be creative, how creativity can go hand in hand with old age people. And this is something which if we as PhD guides, as supervisors, if we inculcate this in our MA students, in our graduate students, that they have to work on these new upcoming topics like creativity and old age. I remember a news some 1 or 2 years back. I heard a 93-year-old granny did skydiving. Generally, skydiving is always associated with young people, but how she must have taken courage and how the family must have supported her, that okay, you want to do this, go do this. Fiddler's paper was on the unconscious efforts made by old men to appear sexually potent. Another significant contribution was by the noted psychoanalyst Erik Erikson, his views on wild strawberries. It's a film directed by Ingmar Bergman, provided a viable interdisciplinary model, one that successfully transcended disciplinary limits. So how you can walk away from the limits that we have created. When it comes to PhD in literature, we only think about certain preconceived notions, but now We have to come out of our disciplinary limits, and we have to think in an interdisciplinary manner. The Human Values and Aging Conference, organized in 1975, was followed by one on aging and meaning, organized by Thomas R. Cole and Sally Gatto at the Institute for the Medical Humanities, University of Texas Medical Branch, Galveston, in the mid 1980s. So it's just in 20th century that we started talking about gerontology. And believe me, if I talk about Indian knowledge system has always been talking about old age. So you can also work on, it's just clicked that how Ayurveda has helped us cope with the old age, with gerontology. It was the volume anthologizing the proceedings of the second conference, titled "What Does It Mean to Grow Old? Reflections from the Humanities," that replaced the interest of humanities scholars in human values and old age. Again and again, I'm reiterating the fact that, see, we are all humanities scholars. So we have to talk about human values, we have to talk about humanitarian aspect, we have to talk about, and we should always contemplate of personal, textual, historical, and cultural meanings of old age. Clear? Like in some cultures, the old age is considered to be an age where you're just put in one room. You can't go out. Everybody is busy. So you can also discuss, you can also compare and contrast the cultural meanings of old age in different cultural perspectives and how it has changed over the period of time. How from Renaissance to the 21st century, what are the developments that has taken in this study of old age? What are the different changes that has evolved in this gerontological perspective? Now, H.R. Moody, in an article in Voices and Visions titled Overview, What is Critical Gerontology and Why is it Important? See again, it considered humanistic or cultural gerontology to be a vision of critical gerontology. Now, what do you mean by humanistic or cultural gerontology? So Moody defines it. Quote, "The perspective defined by the work of humanities scholars on old age and aging." And every writer has written a very different perspective on old age and aging. Every society will have a very different perspective on old age and aging. As we have seen, we can actually work on different perspectives, the perspective of a caregiver, the perspective of doctor. So how you can compare, you can bring in medical humanities with gerontology, and you can select the fictions which are who is talking, where they are talking about doctors and what are the experiences of a doctor when he or she is taking care of an elderly person. Now, humanistic gerontology centers around the interventions of the humanities, such as literature, history, philosophy, arts, theater, and ethics in the study of old age. It, again, in quote, shares many of the same concerns with meaning and subjectivity as cultural gerontology, though with a particularly strong emphasis on the role of the arts and humanities. Very important. See, we are all talking about deteriorating of human values. We as academicians, we as scholars of literature, we should always talk about human values, because it is only these we as literature people, we can uphold all the values, and we should inculcate this right from the moment we enter into our class. We should give such small little assignments to our students. Why? Because see, we are talking about cultural gerontology, and cultural studies is becoming very popular these days. So again, through which a strong emphasis is made on the role of arts and humanities. So art and gerontology, humanities and gerontology, literature and gerontology, history and gerontology, theater, ethics, movies, film studies, a lot. That is why gerontology is not a limited um, arena. It is not limited to one field. It is actually a very wide field. Now, literary gerontology, which is one of the dimensions of cultural gerontology, is broadly the analysis of literary works in order to understand old age. And as I had discussed, every writer will have his or her own perspective on gerontology. Literary gerontologists study literary works on aging in collaboration with disciplines like history, ethics, philosophy, sociology, psychology, and medicine. See, I was talking about medical humanities. So when you're talking about doctor, you can talk, when you're talking about the relationship between a doctor and an elderly patient, you can bring in medical humanities over here. Psychological, when you are doing a psychoanalysis of a medical, of an aged person, of an aged character, you can also add film studies. You can have crisis studies. Literary scholars had begun taking interest in aging and old age in 1970s. The contours of literary gerontology were fleshed out in detail for the first time in Anne M. Wet Brown's essay, The Coming of Age of Literary Gerontology. And it was in 1990s that this essay came, and it was published in the Journal of Aging Studies. In this seminal essay, Watt Brown has discussed in detail the different ways in which literature has intervened in studies of old age and aging, how literature is creeping, how literature has crept into different arenas. It's just that we need to come out of our blockages. We need to come out of our disciplinary thinking. In the initial phase, literary gerontology laid emphasis on the problematic attitudes of authors towards aging and old age. So they were talking about problems. It was initial phase. They were talking about the problems of old age. You have loneliness, you have a existential angst. I remember Fire on the Mountain by Anita Desai, where the lady is suffering from existential angst, whereas a friend has found a purpose. So problematic attitudes, what are the problems that these old people are facing when the children don't have time, grandchildren don't have time? What are they doing? What are the problems? It can be a very simple problem. The maid didn't come. So these kind of small little problems, but they are very big when we talk about aged people. The development of more critical readings of aging in literary texts led to reading aging in literary texts in relation to history, spirituality, religion, ethics, anthropology, politics, philosophy, and the arts. So again, Literary gerontology is not just limited to literature. It has a wider scope. It is related to history, spirituality, religion. How as an elderly person, we expect elderly people to be religious, to be spiritual, to be talking about ethics, anthropology, politics, philosophy, and the arts. I hope I am able to convey at least some things on literary gerontology.
Yes, ma'am. Yes.
Now, another strategy which is adopted in literary gerontology was to study literature from the perspective of psychoanalysis. Like, how do you apply the idea of Erik Erikson or Sigmund Freud, Carl Jung, Dolan Winnicott, Hans Kohut, Jack Slacken, in order to analyze old characters. And this is not just when I talk about old characters. Psychoanalysis is something which we have been doing. It's nothing new. It's just that we have been always talking about the psychoanalytical uh, analysis of the protagonists or of the female characters. Now, when we think about psychoanalysis, we can talk about old people. What are there? How we can analyze them by using the theories of Freud, Jung, Erikson. A more recent approach in literary gerontology has been the focus on narratives dealing with aging in medical care and medical practice. And this is something which has evolved with the evolution of medical humanities. Now, here also you can have different perspectives. Perspective of a nurse, female nurse, male nurse, perspective of the doctor, perspective of the patient towards doctor or towards both male or female nurse. So it is something which is very wide. So how you can incorporate or how you can mingle medical humanities with gerontology. Look, now literary narratives can be broadly divided into two categories. Narratives of decline, because when I talk about old age, there's always declining, and narratives of progress. In popular culture, aging has mostly been perceived as a process signifying the onset of physical decline, and ultimately it culminates into death, as compared to young people or youth, which has been always seen as a metaphor of growth. Earlier, the works, when I talk about problematic aspects of old age, they always saw old age as something that is bringing you towards death, nearing you towards death, onset of physical decline, where your body is not functioning in a proper manner. And remember, earlier works, they belong to this category. In Stories of Aging, Mike Hepworth says that aging is at the same time both a collective human condition and an individualized subjective experience. See, a very important thing to remember. We are all going to become old, obviously. So, what is aging? Aging is collective human condition where you are experiencing pain in your hands, in your limbs, where your body is not throwing that kind of an energy which is required, and also an individualized subjective experience. If you're suffering from any ailment, for you, aging will be the most difficult thing. and if you're fit and fine, then you will enjoy your old age. Integrating literature into aging studies has helped link the objective aspects of old age with subjective experiences of aging. Sometimes the old age, the elderly people are more, what you can say, more energetic as compared to young people. So it is the subjective experiences of aging, how they have taken. And it also depends, the subjective experiences of aging also depends on how the family members have treated them, how much freedom the family members have given. If they want to do something, if they want to join a kitty, if they want to go on a trip, how much support they get from the elderly, from the family members, from the society, from the neighbors where they are living. Now, novels, plays, short stories, poems, they cover multiple cultural narratives of aging. So, as a PhD supervisor, we should always talk about, maybe we can take short stories, maybe we can take novels, we can take plays, and we can combine, we can cover a larger aspect of cultural narratives of aging, which is very important. How it is important to compare, how important it is to have interdisciplinary research on such topics. In the West, critical inquiries into literary works by literary gerontologists such as Mike Hepworth, Kathleen Woodward, Barbara Frey Waxman, Constance Rook, Anne M. Watt Brown, Margaret Gillett, and Roberta Meyerhofer have led to the exploration of social constructions and cultural stereotypes which are associated with old age. So there are many cultural stereotypes which are associated with old age. Like, if I talk about cultural stereotypes, there are many movies also. And there are many cultures, like suppose when I talk about Rajasthan, Rajasthan is a land where not much freedom is given to elderly people. Are ye ho jayega, are wo ho jayega, you'll fall, you'll do this, you'll have this problem, you'll have that problem. So there are many things associated with old age. And then there is this concept of mukti or moksha also, which is derived from Upanishads and which is related to aging in India. And it is very important to contemplate why these concepts came into existence in Upanishadic times and not before that. Why? Because death was in Vedic time. Death was generally understood in terms of youth and vitality. And why? Because it was not a synonym with old age and disrepute. But gradually, when the Upanishads came, 600 BCE, society underwent a major change. Older Vedic worldview gave a new way of life where the Vedic daily life was replaced, and this term came into existence, which was known as gerontophobia. Now, this gerontophobia is another very important term, and why this came? Because of the growth of towns, commerce, organization of trades, crafts, that led to alteration of socio-economic landscape of northern India. Frontier spirit, pioneer economy, robust optimism, a premium that you have to have happy, healthy life was replaced by disenchantment. You are always running behind worldly pursuits. So this is how this gerontophobia started. And when this gerontophobia came, people started getting afraid of old age. And they started. Now, Sylvia Watuk's, there is one essay, Gerontology in India, the State of an Art, and it was published in 1991. This is a seminal essay for two reasons. One, it talks about studies on aging in India, which is unaddressed. And second, why? Because it paved the way for development of cultural gerontology in India. Then you have a lot of essays by H.S. Bhatia, Aging and Society, Suhas K. Biswas' book came, Aging in Contemporary India. Then a lot of works came. Vatuk's Gerontology in India, which is a must read. Then, see, if I talk about cultural studies, you can also have how these um, ladies residing in Vrindavan, the Vidvas residing in Vrindavan, how old age is a burden for them. So the cultural stereotypes associated with old age, with like if you're old, you you cannot eat a lot of sweets. You have a very restricted diet. Barbara Waxman defines literary gerontologists as scholars who study aging through literary texts and seek and examine literature. It can be fiction, it can be non-fiction, it can be poetry, and it can be drama. But they prominently depict older characters that develops themes, settings, plots about later life. So how people are now, what is the change when the literary texts are being written about old age, and what was the time when these literary texts were being written in older times? So you can have a compare and contrast with that also. Under literary gerontology, discussions on old age and gender have majorly been the analysis of literary responses to female aging. Now see, again, in maximum of the works, you have female aging. Nobody is talking about male aging and the problems that are associated with it. You can also have uh, the problems of male aging. And then there is this beautiful essay by Lawrence Cohen in No Aging in India, Modernity, Senility, and the Family, has studied old age in India from the perspective of medical anthropology. Cohen has mainly focused on gradual disintegration of Indian joint families. See, again, joint family, it was very easy for the elderly couples, people to survive. But here, with the disintegration of Indian joint family and the consequent decline of elderly and the nature of contemporary Indian gerontological discourse, how things have changed. And it is a matter of concern. See, there is this S book. There are two books. Sarah Lamb has written two books on aging in India. White Saris and Sweet Mangoes. Aging, Gender and Body in North India. And another one is Aging and the Indian Diaspora. Cosmopolitan Families in India and Abroad. Now, if I talk about the first one, White Saris and Sweet Mangoes is a Hindu aging. It's talking about gender. And it talks about two important metaphors of Hindu life. One is white saris and the other is mango. White sari, decline, widowhood. Sweet mangoes, they stand for something which is auspicious, something which is youth. So how she has brought these two desperate images is wonderful. It's contemplating. We all need to contemplate. Now, when I talk about aging and the Indian diaspora, is all about changing trends and situation of elderly people, cultural conceptions of ideal aging in contemporary India, how the relationships are changing, how it also discusses about the attitudes of elderly people who have moved to United States to be close to their offsprings, how difficult it is for them to adjust, how very difficult it is for them to adjust. This under literary gerontology, discussions on old age and gender have majorly been the analysis of literary sponsors to female aging. This interesting trend in literary gerontology is evident from the focus of works. See, you can have these works from the heart to the open road. A feminist study of aging in contemporary literature by Barbara F. Wexman, Aging and Gender in Literature, Studies in Creativity, edited by Anne M. Watt Brown and Janice Rossen. And
Sonal ma'am, excuse me.
yes,
The slides are not moving, ma'am.
slides are not moving. See? Now,
Yes, now it's moving.
so The Older Woman in Recent Fiction by Joe Brennan. In order to understand why female aging has been the focus of attention, I would suggest everybody to please read this work, as it will give you an insight why the writers are talking about female aging only. It is essential to go back to the book of Simone de Beauvoir, The Coming of Age. Now, references, you can use these works. Johnson called Historical Readings of Old Age and Aging, Old Age from Antiquity to Postmodernity, edited by Paul Johnson and Pat Payne, Routledge. Harry R. Overview, what is critical gerontology and why it is important. Voices and Visions of Aging Towards a Critical Gerontology, edited by Thomas R. Cole, W. Andrew Ackbaum, Patricia L. Jacobi, and Robert Kastenbaum. CanPat, The History of Aging and Old Age in Western Cultures, A Guide to Humanistic Studies in Aging. What does it mean to grow old? Julia and Wendy Martin, The Field of Cultural Gerontology and Introduction, Routledge Handbook of Cultural Gerontology. Watt Brown, Anne, The Coming of Age of Literary Gerontology, Journal of Aging Studies. There are many other works also which are associated with gerontology. And in the coming days, we will be talking about fiction also as a gerontological resource. How important it is to and imagine, understand that the popularity of narrative for gerontology may be because the concept opens up critical space between what is and what is possible. That is why fiction as a gerontological resource is very popular. Then, in the coming days of the FDP, I'm going to talk about the fictions that I have selected. And then in the last one, we are going to sum up what we have learned. What we have learned together. Thank you. I hope the session was clear. Please feel free to ask any questions.
Hi, ma'am. You mentioned the work. I think that's an essay. I don't remember exactly, but the title included aging gerontology in India and abroad. I just missed the name of the work. Can you just mention that again? Some of the slides it was not visible in between. Can you just mention that
Okay,
work? It
I'll
will be
just
very
take you back
helpful.
to the slides. And can you tell me which slide it was?
No, that slide was actually not shown. You just mentioned the work. It was about
Okay. Can you tell me the
abroad.
name of the writer?
No, no, I didn't catch the name of the writer. I just noted the word India and abroad in the title of the. Uh,
Okay, India and abroad. Okay.
yeah.
Okay. I'll just, okay, I'll just recall and let you know.
Okay.
Ma'am, it's aging and the Indian diaspora.
Yeah, that I was able to note, but one of the work was about something related to abroad because I am doing
Yeah, it's
uh,
aging and the Indian diaspora.